Welcome back to NT Coins World, where we dive deep into the stories, value, and legacy behind some of the most fascinating coins in numismatics. If you're a coin collector, a history lover, or just someone who finds the hidden stories behind everyday objects intriguing, you're in the right place. In today's episode, we're exploring two Washington quarters that are often overlooked but hold great value and interest for collectors: the 1970 D Washington quarter dollar and the 1986 P Washington quarter dollar, both in fine condition. These coins may seem ordinary at first glance, but their historical context, mintage figures, unique features, market value, and collector demand make them stand out in the world of US coinage. So, let's begin with our first coin. The 1970 D Washington quarter is a part of the long-running Washington quarter series, which began in 1932. This coin marks a critical point in the series, coming just a few years after the United States transitioned from using 90% silver in coinage to a copper-nickel-clad composition. To understand the 1970 D Washington quarter, we must start with the state of the US economy and coinage reforms of the 1960s. In 1965, due to a silver shortage and rising silver prices, the US Mint eliminated silver from quarters and dimes, replacing it with a clad composition of copper and nickel. By 1970, the public had grown more comfortable with the new coinage, though the shift was still fresh. The Denver Mint was highly active during this time, focusing on producing massive amounts of coins to support growing commerce across the western United States. The 1970 D quarter is a key product of that era, representing both the continuation of the Washington quarter tradition and the permanence of the clad coinage system. The obverse of the 1970 D Washington quarter retains the iconic image of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan. The portrait of Washington faces left with the word "Liberty" inscribed at the top, and "In God We Trust" placed just below his chin. At the bottom of the obverse, the year 1970 is clearly struck, and the D Mint mark denoting the Denver Mint appears just to the right of Washington's ponytail. The reverse of the coin features a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings clutching a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength and readiness for defense. Below the eagle is a pair of olive branches representing peace. The inscriptions United States of America and E Pluribus Unum appear above the eagle, while quarter dollar is inscribed along the bottom edge. Even though the design had not changed significantly since 1932, the 1970 issue represents the maturation of the clad series, as earlier issues still had remnants of silver compositions in special collector versions. The 1970 D Washington quarter had a total mintage of approximately 417,341,364 coins. That figure may seem high, and indeed it is. But for collectors, especially those seeking well-struck, high-grade examples, not all coins are created equal. The sheer volume of production also meant that quality control sometimes varied, leading to interesting errors and imperfections. What's important to note is that circulation was heavy for this coin. Millions were released into everyday use, meaning most examples available today have significant wear, making fine or very fine condition examples relatively more appealing to collectors. One of the most intriguing aspects of the 1970 D quarter is its known error types. Though not as famous as some other error quarters, this year does have several noteworthy varieties that attract collector interest. Double die obverse DDO. Some 1970 ED quarters exhibit slight doubling on the obverse inscriptions, particularly around the date and the word Liberty. Though not widespread, examples certified by grading agencies with this error can fetch a premium. Off-center strikes coins struck off-center from the dies are known to exist, typically off by 5 to 15%. These are valued based on the degree of the misalignment and whether the date and mint mark are still visible. Clipped planchets, coins that were struck on incomplete metal blanks, show as partial curved bites out of the rim. These planchet errors are rarer, but are documented for the 1970 D quarter. Die cracks and cuds, minor die, deterioration on some Denver Mint, dies led to die cracks most visible near Washington's profile or in the lettering, while usually minor, large die cuds, where a piece of the die breaks off and creates a raised blob, are especially collectible. Perhaps the most famous error associated with the year 1970, though not directly tied to the D-Mint coin, is the 1970 S-proof quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian quarter, a very rare error that sold for tens of thousands of dollars. While not the D version, it brought considerable attention to 1970 quarters in general. In fine condition, the 1970 D Washington quarter is relatively common and is worth slightly more than face value, usually between 30 cents and $1.50, depending on eye appeal and wear. However, coins with strong luster, minimal wear, or unusual toning can attract more attention. In higher grades, the value rises sharply. For example, MS-65 examples can range between $20 and $40. MS-67 examples, which are exceedingly rare due to quality control and storage conditions, can be worth $300 or more. Error coins command different price levels. A well-documented DDO or off-center strike can fetch between $50 to several $100, depending on severity and grade. Collectors often pursue the 1970 D quarter for typesets, clad series sets, or error collections. It's especially popular among collectors who focus on the post-silver years of US coinage, as it exemplifies the mass production, industrial age of the US Mint. The coin also garners attention for being one of the last coins produced in the Vietnam War era, a turbulent time in American history, which adds cultural and historical interest to its backstory. The 1986 P Washington quarter dollar represents the continuing legacy of the clad coinage era. While it may seem relatively modern, it offers a wealth of context, especially in terms of US minting trends, production techniques, and changing public attitudes toward coin collecting in the 1980s. The mid-1980s were a stable but evolving time for the US Mint. With inflation leveling off from the extreme highs of the 1970s, the demand for coinage remained strong. There was also a renewed interest in coin collecting as a hobby, driven by advances in coin authentication and grading technologies. 1986 marked a year of high production across all US mints. The Philadelphia Mint played a major role in producing everyday coinage for circulation in the eastern and midwestern United States. This included a large run of Washington quarters, many of which were struck with enhanced efficiency, though not necessarily higher quality. The obverse continues to display John Flanagan's left-facing portrait of George Washington, a design chosen originally to honor the first US president's 200th birthday in 1932. By 1986, this design had remained largely unchanged, though the quality of the die strikes had shifted subtly over time. Key inscriptions include Liberty at the top, In God We Trust, to the left under the chin, the date 1986 at the bottom, and the mint mark P to the right of Washington's ponytail, marking it as a Philadelphia issue. The reverse still features the traditional eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing the balance between war and peace. The Philadelphia Mint struck a staggering 551,199,000 Washington quarters in 1986. This enormous figure makes the 1986 P one of the most common quarters of the decade. While high mintage numbers typically reduce scarcity, they also open the door to interesting die wear patterns, errors, and collectible quirks. Coins in circulated condition are extremely easy to find, which is why fine condition pieces are valued primarily for set completion or sentimental interest rather than intrinsic rarity. Despite the mass production, 1986 P quarters include a number of collectible errors and minor varieties struck through grease. This error occurs when grease or other debris obstructs the die, causing weak or missing design elements. These are more common on 1986 P coins and vary widely in value. Off-center strikes. As with many high-output years, off-center strikes are found among 1986 P quarters, especially in the 5 to 15% range. Well-centered off-strikes with full dates are desirable. Die breaks and cracks. Die fatigue and overuse led to more visible die cracks and chips on some coins. Collectors interested in modern classics also include the 1986 P as a benchmark for mint trends during the Reagan-era economic boom, representing the peak of uniform-clad coinage before the more artistic state-themed redesigns of the 21st century. And there you have it, the full story behind two fascinating Washington quarters, the 1970D and the 1986P. Whether you're just starting your collection or are deep into the hunt for high-grade or error examples, both of these coins offer something valuable, not just in money, but in history, artistry, and culture. If you enjoyed this deep dive into American coinage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode from NT Coins World. Until next time, keep hunting, keep collecting, and keep history in your hands.